The US-China chip war has escalated once again. Following the announcement of new semiconductor export controls to China, the Chinese government declared on December 9th that it would launch an antitrust investigation into Nvidia, a major American chip manufacturer. This move is seen as China's retaliation against US sanctions and a demonstration of its tough stance ahead of President-elect Trump's term, aiming to increase its leverage in future negotiations. In response to the investigation, Nvidia stated, "Nvidia wins on merit, as reflected in our benchmark results and value to customers, and customers can choose whatever solution is best for them. We work hard to provide the best products we can in every region and honor our commitments everywhere we do business." This statement can be interpreted as Nvidia asserting that it has succeeded through its own capabilities, and that customers need Nvidia, not the other way around. As the dominant player in the semiconductor industry, Nvidia occupies an irreplaceable position in the age of large AI models. With the rise of AI models in recent years, its products, which are critical for large model training and inference, have consistently been in short supply. After all, power has always been a symbol of status. According to data from Wells Fargo, Nvidia held 98% of the global data center GPU market in 2023, far ahead of the second place AMD at 1.2% and third place Intel with less than 1%. In the first 3 quarters of 2024, Nvidia's revenue from mainland China and Hong Kong reached $11.6 billion, accounting for 12.7% of its total globally. Nvidia chips are widely used in Chinese-made products such as smartphones, PCs, and cars. If the US-China tech war continues to intensify, key sectors of China's manufacturing industry could face bottlenecks. On December 2nd, the Biden administration announced new measures to restrict China's access to advanced AI chips, imposing export restrictions on 140 Chinese companies, including Huawei and its suppliers. These restrictions aim to prevent chips linked to AI and military development from reaching China. At the same time, President-elect Trump proposed a 60% tariff on imports of Chinese goods. In response, China launched a series of countermeasures. On December 3rd, China announced a ban on the export of certain dual-use minerals, including gallium, germanium, and antimony, to the U.S. Meanwhile, China's industry associations advised domestic companies to carefully consider sourcing U.S.-made chips. This latest countermeasure, an antitrust investigation into Nvidia, follows the U.S.'s new semiconductor export restrictions to China and is seen as China's retaliatory action. The Chinese countermeasures have been carefully planned, especially in terms of timing. They align with the transition of the U.S. government, giving U.S. companies and the incoming administration at least 60 days to feel the effects of these measures. Deputy Editor-in-Chief Lin Hongda of Wealth magazine recently said, "This is about creating leverage for the next round of negotiations. In fact, geopolitical conflicts will only increase, not decrease." Looking at Nvidia's financial reports, its market share in China dropped from 26% in the 2021 fiscal year to 17% in the 2023 fiscal year due to U.S. export restrictions. Lin Hongda added, "The U.S. government, under its system, must protect the interests of American businesses, and Nvidia is a leader in AI. So we can't rule out the possibility that China is using this tactic to slow Nvidia down while buying time to develop its own AI and GPU companies." Professor Yi Yao Yuan, a chair of international studies at the University of St. Thomas in the U.S., told Radio Free Asia that China has long competed with the U.S. in AI industry, but its core chip technology lags far behind. China's goal in using antitrust law to sanction Nvidia is to hinder its development or hope to break it apart. China aims to counterbalance the U.S. system, but with Trump's America First approach, negotiation with China is unlikely. The impact on Nvidia's stock price will only be short-term. The more China pressures Nvidia, the faster it will drive companies out of China and accelerate the decoupling between the U.S. and China. This issue has sparked widespread attention among Chinese social media users, with many commenting on X. Some said, "Do you know why there's an antitrust investigation? It's because we can't use or buy it anyway. Let's bite back." Every time they impose sanctions or investigate others, I'm just counting how long this joke will last and how much they'll pay for their own stupidity. We'll end up with cheaper and more expensive graphic cards. Once Nvidia runs out of stock, everything from the Switch to PS5 and PC graphic cards will all rise in price. We, the gamers, are suffering. Some even joked, Maybe Xi Jinping wasn't happy seeing Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang chatting happily in Vietnam. China is investigating and sanctioning the world's #1 AI company, a company valued at $3 trillion US. It's almost like heading towards North Korea. Others criticize China's antitrust laws as a joke, saying, according to the EU's anti-competition law, the first to be targeted will be these state-owned enterprises. And BYD, which uses its dominant position to force suppliers to lower prices. Foreign competition laws aim to protect consumer rights and prevent unfair competition, while China's is purely for political service. In fact, China's antitrust investigation into Nvidia is not the first time Beijing has targeted U.S. chip manufacturers. In 2023, China imposed a procurement ban on Micron products, citing cybersecurity concerns. This was widely seen as China's first retaliatory action in the U.S.-China chip war. In 2015, another U.S. chipmaker, Qualcomm, was fined over 6 billion yuan after being investigated by the Chinese government for violating antitrust laws. What is the specific reason for China to investigate Nvidia this time? The Wall Street Journal quoted industry insiders, saying that China aims to send a message to the U.S. that it will not remain silent in the face of trade and technology sanctions, especially with President-elect Trump likely to take a series of actions against China when he takes office next month. This issue can be traced back more than 5 years. In March 2019, Nvidia announced its acquisition of the Israeli chip company Mellanox for $6.9 billion US, the latest acquisition in Nvidia's history. Both Nvidia and Mellanox are multinational companies with operations in the US, China, and many EU countries and regions. According to international practices, their merger has to pass antitrust reviews in countries like the US and the EU before it could be finalized. At the time, Nvidia received antitrust approval in China, but Beijing imposed several conditions on Nvidia and the merged entities' operations in China, including bans on forced product bundling, unreasonable transaction terms, purchase restrictions, and discriminatory treatment of customers who buy products separately. The most crucial condition was fair supply of products, which required Nvidia to provide core products to the Chinese market based on fair and reasonable principles. However, in recent years, as U.S. export restrictions to China have intensified, Nvidia stopped exporting high-end GPU chips and related equipment to China. This action was seen by China as a violation of Nvidia's commitments to the Chinese market and became the direct trigger for the current investigation. However, China has not provided any explanation regarding which specific actions by Nvidia violated the terms or why the investigation was launched 4 years after the merger was completed. Ironically, just 2 weeks before Beijing initiated the antitrust investigation, China's Vice Minister of Commerce, Wang Shouwen, had met with Nvidia's Vice President Jay Puri in Beijing and emphasized that China welcomes Nvidia's continued investment in the country. For Nvidia, its revenue from the Chinese market has gradually decreased since 2 years ago when President Biden signed a bill restricting the export of AI chips to China. Moreover, Beijing's strong support for Huawei in its push to become the main supplier of AI chips in China has further reduced Nvidia's market share in China. As a result, Nvidia has placed more focus on expanding its global market presence. Nvidia has strengthened its position in the Asian market through investments and collaborations in places like Vietnam and Japan. The antitrust investigation by China may have come as a surprise to Nvidia, especially since just before the investigation was launched, Nvidia has signed a cooperation agreement with Vietnam. According to Bloomberg, on December 5th, Nvidia announced it would collaborate with the Vietnamese government to open its first AI research and development center in Vietnam. On the same day, Nvidia founder Jensen Huang and Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh attended the signing ceremony. Huang revealed that Nvidia is helping Vietnam build its first artificial intelligence and cloud computing infrastructure, aiming to advance Vietnam's robotics and AI-driven technologies. Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh expressed hope that this cooperation would help elevate Vietnam's tech industry to new heights. What is particularly notable is that Nvidia has already acquired a Vietnamese AI startup, signaling the company's strong optimism about its future development in the region. Why did Nvidia choose Vietnam? While some people in China were still mocking Vietnam as a country with insufficient electricity, Nvidia was investing in building factories there. Jensen Huang even shared drinks with the Vietnamese prime minister. The meeting between a young, wealthy tech billionaire and the prime minister of a nation was striking. Their handshake and embrace, along with their casual demeanor, made it seem like they were close friends. There was no grand ceremony, no fine wine or fancy dishes. Instead, in the old quarter of Hanoi, on an old and crowded street, they sat at a small table, clinking bottles of $1 beer, eating less than $3 stir-fried dishes. The streets weren't blocked off for them. They mingled with the crowd, chatting and taking photos with passers-by, displaying a rare warmth and approachability. Nvidia's move to Vietnam has sparked international attention. The Chinese government has expressed displeasure, believing that Nvidia's action could undermine China's technological influence in the Asia-Pacific region. Nvidia's collaboration with the Vietnamese government to set up an AI research center not only boosts Vietnam's tech development, but also strengthens Nvidia's position in the global tech competition. This suggests that without the Chinese market, Vietnam could replace China as a key revenue source for Nvidia. In addition to expanding in Vietnam, on November 13th, Jensen Huang announced Nvidia's deepening cooperation with Japan's SoftBank Group. Huang met with the founder Masayoshi Son in Japan for a relaxed offline conversation about Japan's AI development. Son openly praised Huang, stating that Huang would achieve the same level of success as Steve Jobs over the next decade. SoftBank has successfully tested the world's first AI and 5G telecom network using Nvidia's AI Air acceleration computing platform. Furthermore, Huang has publicly referred to Taiwan as a country which touched a sensitive nerve for China. In May this year, during a visit to a Taiwanese company, Huang was asked about Taiwan's position in the global tech field. He replied in English, calling Taiwan one of the most important countries in the world and emphasizing its significance. In Nvidia's financial reports, China, Taiwan, and the United States are listed side by side. From a company on the verge of bankruptcy, Nvidia has grown to become the world's highest valued company. This is not only a legendary business story, but also a textbook example of a comeback thanks to Huang's leadership. Now, Nvidia is in its prime as one of the most high-profile companies in the U.S. stock market and global capital markets. Nvidia truly deserves the title of the top tech stock in China. Nvidia's profitability has made it a standout among almost all tech companies. In recent years, Nvidia has been heavily involved in nearly every global tech trend: cloud computing, cryptocurrency, and the metaverse, artificial intelligence, and cloud services. This involvement has significantly increased Nvidia's valuation. Nvidia's stock price skyrocketed from $3 in December 2018 to $144 in October 2024, a 48-fold increase over 6 years. By June of this year, Nvidia had become the most valuable company globally. While Apple took 35 years to reach the top, Nvidia did it in just 30 years. The impact of China's investigation into AI chip giant Nvidia extends far beyond the issue itself. Taiwan is a global leader in the semiconductor chip industry, but in recent years, as tensions in the Taiwan Strait have continued to rise, Beijing has increased its military and political pressure on Taiwan. Under President Lai Ching-te of the Democratic Progressive Party, the situation has worsened, leading many to worry about the security of producing advanced chips in Taiwan. Assistant researcher Shou Wen Wang at the Institute for Taiwan Defense and Security Studies told the media that China might lose out while trying to save face. She noted that just as the U.S. took action against China's TikTok, China is targeting Nvidia in retaliation. She believes that at the very least, Nvidia's stock price would be affected by this investigation. But she added that if China is unhappy with Nvidia supplying lower-tier chips to Huawei, it shouldn't hold Nvidia accountable, as American companies must follow U.S. government regulations on exports to China. Head of the China Citizens Court Lawyers Group, Liang Xiaohua, pointed out that not long ago, China sanctioned some U.S. defense companies and executives involved in military sales to Taiwan. He argued that China often imagines itself on par with the U.S., but its strength and status are far from that of the U.S., and such sanctions have little practical impact, serving more as political statements. Although international media largely see this as the latest escalation in the U.S.-China tech war, some Chinese commentators believe it could be retaliation for TikTok's legal defeat. On December 6th, the U.S. Court of Appeals ruled against TikTok, ordering it to either break up or be sold to a U.S. company. Liang Xiaohua further noted that the U.S. court's ruling in the TikTok case designated China as an adversarial country. This term had previously only been used for Iran, North Korea, and Russia. But this ruling explicitly named China as an adversary, raising questions about whether the U.S. and China are already in a de facto hostile relationship and whether this could lead to a split or escalate into unforeseen consequences. Liang added that many of the Chinese government's major decisions under the current leadership seem irrational to outsiders. From the destruction of Hong Kong's freedoms to the setbacks of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the Belt and Road Initiative, and the Xiang'an New Area, none of these projects have fully succeeded. He believes that this may reflect the leadership's impulsive nature, prioritizing short-term political gains without considering the long-term consequences. This might end up hurting China more than any sanctions would ever do.